What Aston Martin just announced is insane. Aston Martin's good Interlagos Grand Prix has broken the ice that accumulated in Silverstone during the summer, especially since the Canadian Grand Prix. And yes, this sentence might sound weird, but what's also weird is how the surprise of the season became the disappointment of the season after the dream started. And while Aston Martin has solved almost all of their concerns, one of them remains that might still derail their season if it's not derailed enough so far. After months of struggling and increasing concern, along with a couple of painful races, Aston Martin's F1 season was in jeopardy. However, Fernando Alonso has now made a strong comeback, securing a podium finish in Brazil through determined racing. And this sudden reversal of fortune allowed the team to breathe a sigh of relief. Looking back, it's evident how Aston Martin's season had been in decline, and Alonso's well-earned third place in Brazil injected some much-needed positivity towards the end of the year, with Lance Stroll supporting him in fifth place as Aston Martin's 25-point haul from this weekend surpassed their total from the last 6 races. But it wasn't just about accumulating points. It was a genuine podium finish, achieved by being significantly more competitive, both in qualifying and during the race, than they had been in months. The gap to the race winner, Max Verstappen, was noticeably reduced compared to the recent disappointing Grand Prix performances. And while Ferrari and Mercedes may have underperformed and Sergio Perez's Red Bull started from an unfavorable position, Alonso and Stroll demonstrated impressive speed, surpassing most of their rivals. This result wouldn't have seemed out of place earlier in the season when Aston Martin was considered a leading team, and in fact Alonso finished closer to the winner than he did in the season opener in Bahrain. While it may not have reached the heights of Canada, where the Aston Martin was clearly the second fastest car and Alonso contemplated a potential victory, this performance in Brazil was undeniably well-deserved and showcased the team's front-running capabilities. So it wasn't a result handed to them by bad driving from their competitors. This was precisely what the team needed after struggling with development, losing direction, and appearing worse than ever. As they introduced new ideas relevant for 2024 that didn't immediately translate to performance, the question arose: how did this remarkable turnaround occur? Aston Martin suddenly found itself facing a perplexing situation, as upgrades were either not performing up to par or causing new issues, and these upgrades included a mix of performance enhancements aimed at 2023 and concepts intended to shape the team's direction for 2024. The pivotal moment came during the sprint weekend in the US, when Aston Martin introduced its final major modification, and this move seemed to leave the team in a state of confusion. Both drivers expressed dissatisfaction with the car's handling, and debuting a new floor at a sprint event allowed little time for assessment and fine-tuning, which led to a drastic decision for the US Grand Prix, with both cars starting from the pit lane. Stroll retained the new floor while Alonso reverted to the old one, coupled with significant setup adjustments that resulted in an improved race day performance. However, Mexico didn't yield any positive outcomes. Aston Martin once again split the car specifications, with Stroll using the old floor and Alonso the new one, but unfortunately both cars retired after a dismal and uncompetitive weekend, and Alonso uncharacteristically spun twice, and both drivers complained about a severe lack of grip and confidence. Despite this, senior figures maintained their belief that Aston Martin hadn't lost its way, that the situation wasn't as dire as it seemed, and that they viewed it as a learning experience, albeit a challenging one, that provided valuable data for the team to work with. Performance director Tom McCulloch conceded that in hindsight it might not have been the best course of action, but the payoff was 2 races worth of comparative data and a re-established understanding of the car's behavior on track. The perplexity and frustration that accompanied the recent struggles with development played a significant role in why key figures within the team, including Alonso, openly acknowledged that the performance in Brazil was a major relief. And while it remains highly improbable for Aston Martin to bounce back and reclaim 4th place in the championship from McLaren, especially after being overtaken during their competitive downturn, there has been a prevailing realization that ending this year on a high note was imperative, and this was to ensure that a very successful season, especially when compared to 2022, would not be overshadowed by a lackluster finish. The urgency for a positive outcome was evident after the surprising third-place qualifying result for Stroll and Alonso's strong fourth-place performance in Brazil. And even then, team boss Mike Crack expressed his satisfaction, calling it a fantastic and relieving turnaround after a grueling triple header of races with high expectations and little to show for it so far. Alonso then translated this into a podium finish in the Grand Prix itself, and Stroll, despite a challenging start, managed to secure a fifth-place finish, which highlighted just how timely and crucial this performance and result were. While Alonso had stood by his team for the most part during its decline, tending to focus on the positives, he has now acknowledged that the team has been facing challenges for several months. "We've been struggling for a few months," Alonso said, "but the last two races were probably quite painful. We had to experiment a little bit on a few things on the car to really understand the direction that we were going, and we have to go for next year's car as well. Those races were painful, especially Mexico. We were very slow as a team." The particularly difficult previous two races had left him concerned about the remainder of the year and possibly even for 2024. However, that is no longer the case. This shift is not solely because the car suddenly regained its speed, but also because there have been internal realizations within the team that have steered them in a better direction for development and setup, which was evident in Brazil. And now Alonso is highly enthusiastic about what might be achievable in the final few races. As he put it, there's a markedly different energy when you have a performing car, and this sentiment resonates with everyone at Aston Martin. "I was a little bit concerned. It's a very different energy when you have a performing car," Alonso stated this after the Brazilian Grand Prix. "The elephant in the room here is that Aston Martin must eventually address what hasn't worked with its upgrades, and if the changes introduced in Austin were meant to guide the development direction for 2024, then regardless of how common it may be to mix and match specifications, it could be slightly problematic that not everything new has stayed on the car, which aligns with the trend of Aston Martin being disappointed that its upgrades haven't yielded more this season." It's unclear whether this is a carefully crafted message or not, but the team's stance is that the evaluation work on the Austin and Mexico upgrades was primarily about exploring ideas and gathering data for 2024, rather than an immediate performance boost. While it might be convenient for a team to dismiss disappointing performances with a casual assertion that races are being used as test sessions, McCulloch is resolute in his belief that Aston Martin has gained a solid understanding of how to develop the car for next year. The fact that they've stood by this narrative even after struggling in Austin and Mexico and then backed up their words with actions in Brazil inclines us to give them the benefit of the doubt. However, since this is just one race, we also remain cautious and will note an asterisk against their confidence in development for next year. This year and the next, a high-performing Aston Martin is only truly valuable if its driver can extract the maximum potential from it. Both drivers demonstrated this in Brazil, but Fernando Alonso's exceptional performance served as a powerful reminder of just how crucial he is to Aston Martin. He skillfully held off Sergio Perez's much faster Red Bull for nearly the entire Grand Prix, culminating in a stunning overtake on the final lap. It was a masterclass in strategic racing, leaving Perez perfectly summarizing Alonso's statement that he will always try to play any game, but it'll always be fair. While there were certainly strategic maneuvers at play in the race, Alonso's brilliance went beyond mere tactics, and his audacious move to overtake Lewis Hamilton on the first lap of the restart proved pivotal, allowing him to control his pace and extend his initial stint, which also helped him build a gap to Perez, who took considerably longer to get past the two Mercedes drivers. This gave Alonso a comfortable buffer and allowed him to preserve his tyres for when Perez inevitably closed in. When that moment arrived in the final stint, Alonso proved to be a formidable adversary as he made smart use of his advantage in clean air, maintaining just enough distance in the last corners to avoid becoming an easy target on the start-finish straight, and he strategically conserved his battery for this crucial stretch. Additionally, he varied his racing lines to confuse Perez and create more turbulent air, making it challenging for his rival to overtake. Ultimately, the Red Bull's superior performance began to show, and on the penultimate lap, Perez finally managed to pass Alonso on the run to the first corner. However, Alonso demonstrated remarkable resilience, staying close enough to mount a counterattack on the final lap. He applied pressure on Perez, causing a small error, and seized the opportunity to regain his position. Alonso conceded that his third-place finish, just half a second behind, might not have been his most impressive podium of 2023, but it was arguably the most hard-fought. Given the context of the past couple of months, it held immense value for Aston Martin, surprising many just as they did in the season opener in Bahrain. What do you think about Aston Martin's season? Let us know in the comments below, and we will see you in the next video.